Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown. Daniel Routledge and Dave Forrester with you once again to look back over all the action in the British Basketball League this weekend. We'll start with Friday night. We'll start with the game you were at, Dave. Newcastle Eagles 64, Manchester Giants 84. Return of Ramon Fletcher, of course, who signed for the Giants in the summer. Newcastle, particularly Mockford, got off to a hot start. Eagles with the three guards. We've seen Mark use that with GB, with Mockford basically playing the three. Not really much in it in the first few minutes of the game.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, I got to give the guys a shout for the flags. I've already commented.
Yeah. Is that a permanent thing, or is that a one-off?
I don't know. I mean, obviously Newcastle United have this organisation called War Flags, who provide all of who I think they're a charitable organisation or whatever, but do it. I think they've loaned the Eagles a few, so I don't think there's any reason why it shouldn't be. But it made for a kind of nice change.
Yeah, it's good.
As somebody who hates extraneous, I kind of tolerated it.
Yeah.
So that was good. Jim, with the arena was packed, which was great. It was a really kind of a feeling of a kind of an event, which was really good. And the game, it was all right. Newcastle missing Kennedy, as well as obviously Graham Bell, who's an absolutely massive loss for them.
Yeah,
the season, because he's kind of the only guy on their roster who's probably the stretch four. And the stretch four is really, really important. And Kennedy's probably the only other guy who could be a stretch four, and he wasn't playing either. So two guys down. I don't think there's much choice to go with the three guards, to be honest. The only other guy who really could have started would have been Varner, and Varner's just got in there, 4 or 5 days ago. So and then Manchester, basically a BBL all familiar team. We're all, which always gives you a kind of a head start at the beginning of the season, in particular, when you've got people who know what they're going into and understand the league and understand the game, But it started off really back and forwards, really quite entertaining. I thought Newcastle's energy was really good early. Manchester's experience showed. Dirk got out in transition. I thought all the kind of the key points though were trending towards Manchester, because the kind of the cheap points in transition. Fletcher going to his left, that type of stuff.
He did. There was it BBL Fix? Somebody put out the video of Fletcher's baskets, and it was to the left.
Well, and I've seen it. I've spent 7 years, spent 4 years in the Premier League. I've seen it every time he comes across a new guard.
Yeah.
It's because the people in the as you play basketball, as you're growing up, you're absolutely trained to square people to get squared up on defense. And he actually looks for that to get people squared up, because that allows him to go left, and you almost have to shift the way you play, the way you've been taught to defend your whole life. And in the midst of the maelstrom that is a game, the first game of the season, 3,000 players, fans, lots of flags, etc. That's a tough thing to do. So all those things, I thought Manchester's baskets were just a little bit easier than Newcastle's baskets, and also they got stuff in transition as well, which really, the Eagles had to take away, because the Eagles weren't that big, and they were giving up runouts off made baskets and stuff like that. But no, it was relatively competitive.
Yeah, Giants had a 13-2 run to lead 16-24, but it was pretty close after that. And Giants led for most of the first half, but it was close lead, and it was 41-42 at halftime. Newcastle got themselves ahead in the third quarter, 52-46. Fletcher and Lee cut the gap, and then Nicholas Lewis came to life in the fourth quarter. He had that 4-point play that helped them out to 57-62, and that really sparked some life into them. Yeah,
I thought, to be honest, that Newcastle burned a lot of energy in the third quarter. They really were all over the court. They were hustling, but they were down bodies. They only had 7, and they weren't getting much in the way of production out of their bigs, because their bigs got into foul trouble. So all Burns and Shelton were in foul trouble. That meant that there was very little in the way of rotation that the Eagles could do. And, so you've got, Coe, Hamlet, and Mockford playing 35 minutes plus each, which is, ultimately going to wear you down eventually. And I thought that's kind of what happened. For Giants, I think there was did what he does, which we've seen in the BBL, many years. He'll come in, he may change the game. The shots are going up. He's going to try and make plays. Some days, some nights it will come off, and he'll be the difference maker in the game. And he certainly gave them a boost offensively that the Eagles weren't able to get. And the Eagles struggled to deal with Giants' length all night. To be honest, they struggled from the floor. I think they were only 29% or something.
28% from the floor. Yeah.
From the floor. And it's not that they haven't got guys who can make shots. So so I thought, the length and just the amount of energy that they, it was quite febrile in there. It was really good environment basketball wise. It's the first game of the season, so you've got that hype, and obviously Manchester just that little bit more ahead in relation to having had the 2 games last weekend, which I think some circumstances you say, oh well, that's a disadvantage. Maybe in January or March, it's an advantage to have a week off and freshen up and get bodies. But certainly at the beginning of the season, I think it's an advantage to be playing. Because if you're playing, you're in rhythm, and you got the rhythm of the game, and the coach is able to get the rhythm of the team quicker and make sure he's got the right people in at the right time. So Newcastle basically dried up. They needed to score inside, they couldn't score inside, and then the 3 stopped dropping because I think the guards got tired.
Lewis and 1, 5 points for Lee. Giants had 10 in a row, and suddenly it was 59-72 with 5 to play, and Giants look a bit spent. Eagles look a bit spent at that point, as you talked about.
I thought so. I mean, as I say, the Eagles bigs were 3 for 19. If you go with Ogburns, Shelton and Defoe were 3 for 19. Out of the 3 of them, you'd probably only say that Defoe had any real impact in the game because he got to the foul line a bit and played probably the best defense. Giants bigs, Green and Lee were 18 of 30 or something like that, which is just an impossible situation to overcome. The Eagles guards need the bigs to be able to make plays and finish, because otherwise that's the difference between scoring 65 and scoring 85. And they didn't. William Lee was probably the best player on the court. Athletic, involved, capable of comfortable shooting the ball in all sorts of different areas, from the 3, from the catch. I think again there is a scouting report for him, but I don't think Newcastle got it at all. And I think that we're going to see more and more as this season goes on. Teams playing each other 5-6 times. It's going to be who's able to scout, who's able to scout, because I'm sure the scouting was done, but which players are smart enough to follow it. Yeah. It's going to be a big thing as the season goes on. What do you think?
I think that sounds about right. As you say, they just seem to run out of gas. It was a pretty even game, I thought, for the 3 quarters, and then Lewis was the difference in that key moment in the game, because he was an extra scorer that they had coming off the bench that could do something. And he's one of those sort of players that's a bit unpredictable. He's predictable in that the shot's going up and he's going to make plays, but he's unpredictable in the way that he impacts in the game. And he's
mercurial.
Mercurial. That's probably a better word.
Is your silky touched midfield general? Yeah. He's going to stroll around and create some goals, or hauled off by the merge after half now because he's a lazy sod. I'm not saying Nick's not lazy. I'm not saying he's lazy. That's the football analogy. Working or not.
Giants with the last 10 points of the game to make it a 20-point victory. Hamlet and Mockford 14 and 16, but a combined 10 of 33. Varner with 15 points and 7 rebounds off the bench. He was 6 of 12. We talked about Eagles shooting numbers: 28% from the floor, 26% from 3, and 20 turnovers.
I thought Hamlet and Mockford, to be honest, were impacted by the if you've got 2 bigs in the game, which they did have for quite a lot of time. I've talked about it before. That stretch 4, the spacing isn't quite what it would be if you've got another guy. If you've got, for instance, a Will Neighbour type standing out on the 3-point line. I thought they were impacted by that because it allowed the Manchester guys to use their length and to stay inside and to be around the rim. And I thought, even Cohen as well. And Cohen actually quite impressed me. I thought, as a savvy guard, he had 11 assists in his first game. I think he's a sharp guard. He's a little bit kind of in the Teddy mold. We'll have to see how much he can score as the league goes on. But I thought he was quite impressive. For Manchester, Fletch just did what Fletch did, and he's not in game shape, nowhere near game shape at the moment. And from on, if you're watching, I'm sorry, you're not in game shape, you know that. And he's still at 19 and 9, which just says, how talented he is. And having, we've seen it before, early season teams that have been around, they've got players that have been around, are benefited. That's the way it is.
William Lee, 22, 11 and 4 assists. Fletcher, you mentioned 19, 9, 5 rebounds as well. 19 and 9 for Green as well. Giant shot 50% from the floor, which was
Taj Green's an interesting character. He really, as a kid coming out of Division 2, he's really kind of, you can see he carries himself with this degree of confidence. You know, he's not afraid to shoot the ball. He's not afraid to make plays. And most importantly, he's running down the court faster than everybody.
Yeah. He enjoys it too. You could see.
Yeah, well, he does that way. He's like the like a young stallion. He kind of kicking off in every direction. You can see he's got energy to absolute burn.
Yeah.
And if he now the smartest thing he can do, is to listen to the guys he's playing with.
Yeah.
If he listens to the guys he's playing with, he has a chance to be really, really good, not just for a few games. And we've all seen, or for half a season, because we've all seen people come in like that and flame out. But if he's able to channel, Fletcher and Williams and Lee and listen to them and figure it out, he's going to be really good.
So let's go to the game I was at. London Lions 89, Leicester Riders 78. Wojciech Herban in for the Lions, Aaron Best out. Leicester had signed Derek Thornton, but it was always unlikely that you were going to throw a point guarder who doesn't know the plays out there against the London Lions. So Connor Washington was in the starting lineup, and we didn't see anything of Thornton at all. Lions jumped on them early. There was quite a few breakdowns defensively, and they were just seeming to be getting open dunks in the key, and they were 12-2 up London after 3.5 minutes.
And it's what talent does to you, because I was watched it back after the Eagles game. Obviously I've got a busy Friday night and watched it back, and it's one thing saying these are our screen and roll principles, right? It's another thing doing it when Decker's coming off. And you're thinking, right, okay, so we're just going to hedge, but I'm going to have to hedge a little bit more than normal. Sorry, I'll just for people who don't know, hedging is when the big guy steps up but doesn't overcommit and then tries to get back to his player, giving the guard time to get around the screen and put pressure on the ball handler. But the hedge has to be a little bit longer with that guy, because if you're not there, if by the time the big retreats before the guard gets over the screen, then it's over. He's just going to pull it. He's going to train shot after shot. So the first two players, and certainly one of them was Decker, I can't remember if it was the second one, what we call empty corner screen and rolls, where there's nobody on that side of the court, nobody else on that side of the court. So there's only the two defenders that are in it, really, and all the other defenders on the other side. And both times they just stayed a little bit too long on the ball, and that allowed the ball to be thrown down to a big target. I think it was at least Kufos on one occasion for a dunk, and maybe Soko on the other occasion. And that's just what talent. That's just talent. Just plays with your mind, and it plays with the split seconds of time that you have to make the right decisions. And that's that's starting. I mean, I'm of the view that the Lions bench is a very competitive BBL team.
Yeah.
The Lions starting lineup is woo. Is a bit beyond that. It showed, that suddenly they were, and obviously Leicester are disadvantaged because Connor's having to start. But it's still a pretty cohesive unit that they've got there.
Yeah.
And in the first 5 or 6 minutes, they just weren't really able to get anything. Nelson Henry wasn't able to get anything inside, and you were just wondering where is their shots coming from. And of course, the danger with that is it allows London to get off and run. And the biggest thing that Leicester have done over the past decade is control tempo. They don't let teams run them because they get good shots. And when because they get good shots because of their system, because they've always got the 4 out, they know what they're meant to be doing. They've got players who, square pegs and square holes, etc. And London just kind of take that away with their length, and the fact that they haven't got a point guard to do what they've been doing the last couple of years, which means all the other players have to do a bit more.
Yeah.
And it's not the best time to have all the other players do a bit more when you're facing a $2 million roster.
No. In some ways, that was the ball game right there, those first 3.5 minutes, because it was 77-76 from that moment onwards. The lead was never more than 16, never less than 7. At times, London looked like they might get away. At times, Loving would make some shots, or Whelan or Walker, and Leicester, you thought maybe find a way back into the game. They just sort of hung around without ever really looking like they were going to do it.
It was, and I think that was. It's like I'm just making this up as I go along here. I've just had this
every week. We've been doing this for 3 years now, Dave.
Yeah. But it's like you're in the. I kind of like think of Ryan Schmidt as like somebody. He's in the. Do not take a picture of this. Anybody? No mental pictures. Yeah. He's in the shower, right? He's got the tap, right? He's got the ability to turn it to hot, extremely hot. Or just that little bit down where it just goes from hot to immediately extraordinarily cold.
Yeah.
Right? When he goes just a little bit too far into his bench at the same time. Yeah. But he was always in control of the lineups he had on in that game to the point whereby he could not win by as many as he wanted, because that's not the way it works. But he always had the ability to know that there was an opportunity to turn the temperature up if he got it cold, And that's a wonderful ability to have, because he's also monitoring minutes. He's trying to keep a bench happy. Yeah. So his job almost becomes as much as kind of mathematician and psychologist as coach.
Yeah.
Because when you've got, because if you want to win by 30, then you just run out. Decker, Huber, Zubcic, Kufos or Sharma and Luke Nelson, you play them for 30 minutes and you play them 7 minutes, put the bench in for 5 minutes, play them the next 8 minutes and do the same again in the second half, and you're going to win by 25. That's not, but he can't do that. And and it wouldn't be right to do that this early in the season. He's got to see what he's going to get from everybody else. And I didn't even mention Soko there.
Well, I was about to say his rotation changed a little bit early in the third quarter when Soko got disqualified for an unsportsmanlike.
I'm not happy with your technical. I don't mind the unsportsmanlike. That was a good call. I'm not happy with the technical.
Yeah,
I'm not happy with the technical. And he dunked the ball. The ball hit his shin, from what I could see, as he dunked it, and went away. I don't think you can call it technical unless it's a deliberate motion of a player to delay the game. There was no one there to put the ball back in. I thought there was an involuntary ball hit leg as opposed to Ovi kicks ball.
I think because it was him that had got the delay of game. I know the delay of game warning is for the team and it doesn't matter who gets the first one. But I think because it was him that got the original one, because he basically jumped in front of I think it was Nelson Henry was trying to inbound the ball from the end line. He sort of jumped in front, like footballers do on a free kick, where they jump in front of the ball so you can't take a quick free kick. I think because of that, he had almost like a shorter leash. Because like you, I sort of looked at it and went, gosh, that's a bit on the, even to the point where I sort of went, well, I suppose it could have been a technical for swinging on the ring, because we've had this discussion before, where it's in the rules that swinging on the ring for longer than is safe. It never gets called.
That's because basket technology used to run the risk
of breaking it.
Haney at Gates said 1985 for Bristol in the war.
I mean, I've seen it a few times. And there was one, actually, I think it was Green in the game today, who was on there for ages. And I was thinking, if ever you were going to call it, it was that one. But I did get it checked. I did get it checked, and it was for knocking the ball away that he got the
bad call. I mean, I don't like that call. I think if a player, if a player, without thinking, does something which delays the game, that's fine. But it has to be advertent. It can't be inadvertent. It can't, there has to be a mental element to that. If you catch the ball in your hands and you put it somewhere where it shouldn't go, you've done it. You've not been knowing what you're doing.
Right, the warning was fine. I haven't got a problem. Yeah. The warning was a deliberate delay of game. The technical that he got, I think it was because it was him. And I think if Urban had done that, he wouldn't have got a technical for it, even though they'd had the warning as the team.
And it has an impact, and I think, you know, this is what, you know, it always strikes me as very strange that you can get, you know, that punishment is the same as going up to a player and pushing them in the chest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
it's like football though, isn't it? You get 2 soft yellow cards adds up to a red card, and you get.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be like football, does it? You know,
No, I'm just saying.
but that's all the more reason why it has to be right. You know, and unfortunately, the ref have no discretion in relation to the second incident, and then he has to leave the court. But you know, you have to be right on both of them. Just saying, oh no, you know, it's not like the NBA. You know, technicals don't count. You know, you know, it's not good. So I didn't. That's the first don't like it call of the week. That one, I'm afraid. The other thing about that game was, you know, Zubcic. Good luck, Garden Zubcic, everybody. Yeah, me. 6 foot, what, 10 and a half, 11, something like that. Long arms, range, dribbling. You know, I think Soko not playing meant that he played a bit more. I don't think that did Leicester any good.
No, I would agree with that. I think Leicester probably would have preferred Soko.
Yeah.
Pick your poison.
You know, pick your poison. And we saw kind of, obviously, they changed the starting lineup this week because Ruban was in. So they took Van Oostrom out and put Luke Nelson in at the point, which allowed Luke Nelson to get into a rhythm. I don't think Luke Nelson is best suited to being kind of a spot guy off the bench. I think he needs to have a rhythm and be in control of a game, certainly to be in the game from early start. And I think that helped them as well. And I think that's probably the way that they'll play going forward. I think the only issue will be, you know, is Zubcic going to be the, you know, the 6th man for Europe, basically. I can see that happening. But if obviously going to start and to have 2 guys, I mean, to have one of Kufos or Sharma is taking the mickey. To have 2 of them is just like, oh, away. You know, I mean, I'm sorry, away. Come on, 2 really, one after the other. Yeah. I mean, Sharma's ability to kind of pump fake at the 3-point line. This is a British passport guy. Pump fake at the 3-point line, put it down his left hand, cross over to his right, take 2 steps and finger roll it up and in. I mean, you know, we're looking at, you know,
and the alley-oop that he caught, the fact that he was able to just catch it, let alone dunk it afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, that's DeAndre Jordan. That's kind of even one step at one, you know, Kyle Kelly last year. So that talent is good. Leicester, I thought they really pulled some shots out of the backside to stay close, to be honest. You know, Loving, Jackson, you know, you can see that they're a focused, disciplined unit. And obviously Walker is probably as good as he's ever been, I think, at this stage. He's probably as healthy as he's ever been. I'm guessing that's why he's
certainly at Leicester. I mean,
certainly at Leicester, yeah. But even I mean, at Worcester he was, and he hasn't really pulled up any trees abroad. And at Worcester he was hit and miss a little bit. He's a bit younger though. You know, I think he's far more disciplined now, in relation to the way he plays, in relation to his just the way he looks about himself as well. So he really again stood out, just like he did in the Euro Cup game, in the Champions League game, sorry. And everybody else, you know, kind of did what they did, but you know, they've been so used to dictating games, and they were dictated to. You know, and that was the thing about the game. They were dictated to, and they didn't really have anywhere to go. Now, whether Thornton gives them that, you know, but Thornton is a BBL signing. He's a solid on his resume. He's a solid BBL signing. You know, he's a BBL budget signing. What I mean by that is he's not a Euro Cup budget signing. So he will, you know, how will he fit into what they do, and you know, where are they looking? I mean, are they really? Because when you've won so much, and you develop that pride as a bunch of players that have been through this, as winning, and then you get met by something which is like London are, which is basically a steamroller coming straight at you. Very difficult to turn around and say, "Oh, we'll just try and beat everybody else." You know, they're not going to do that. You know, the issue is whether are they going to be able to stay together if they can't beat London through the futility of having to beat everybody else again, not to win the league. You know, and normally they would, but it's going to be hard because it's a 36-game season. You know, and there's quite a lot of good teams in this league, and without a separating figure, which Crandall was at a lot of times last year, they're going to probably be in more close games this year than they were last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had the second best differential, I think, in the history of the league. So I would imagine.
But I'll tell you what, it's probably impossible that they're not.
Yeah.
Albeit depending on how.
I think London will threaten that record.
Well, it depends on how much Ryan turns the show or not, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You want to send him stats every week, tell him what he needs to be aiming for this week.
The only one that was bigger was the Kingston team that was playing in the old Champions Cup, as it was. So that was the first time Leicester have lost their opening BBL game of the season since 2010, and only the second time they've been under 500 in the last 11 years. So Zubcic with 20 points, although 20 shots for his 20 points.
Yeah, but as I say,
yeah. Deca are much more efficient, 18, 10, and 6. Kufos, 12. They absolutely crushed Leicester on the boards, 44-28. They had 15 offensive rebounds to 24 Leicester defensive rebounds.
And that size, it's just
17 points off turnovers, 17 second chance points. Leicester were led by Loving, whose 21 points came off 10 shots.
Yeah,
he was very efficient. Whelan less so, 3 of 11 for 16 points. Jackson 13, and Walker, who I thought was good as well, for 12. So let's go to the Saturday night game down at the Wise campus. Bristol Flyers 68, Sheffield Sharks 55. VJ King, I say back, he didn't play the previous week. He was in the lineup, first time we've seen him. There you go. That works well on the audio version of the podcast. Leslie Smith was out for the Flyers. Glasgow was back, but coming off the bench for Sheffield, and that was good to see, because I worried that injury might be a bit more serious than that, but fortunately he's back. A great introduction for King, by the way. 7 early points, got off to a good start.
Yeah, Bristol are kind of, at the moment, they've only played 2 home games, but they're kind of my man crush at the moment, because they're all they're an interesting group, dear me. And actually, without Smith, they became even more interesting, because they got even smaller at times. It's basically Del Pesh and a bunch of guys who jump around a lot and can make plays. And figuring them out is tough, but their athleticism is really even for BBL is eye-watering, and Sheffield are far more kind of systematic and normally compiled BBL team. Orthodox. Well, thank you, Orthodox. Keep me right. An Orthodox BBL team. So yeah, and Sheffield started off relatively well in the game, and Bristol, I'm still not sure how many of those Bristol guys can actually really shoot. I think Mahan can. I think Ollison probably can. King made some shots, and Bell is Bell's a junkyard dog. Bell's all over the place. He's I think you'd enjoy coaching Bell, just with the energy, the athleticism, the defense, etc. But yeah, they got going, and but Sheffield played with them, because the game was actually, it was a remarkable first quarter, because I was thinking this game's being played at Bristol's place up and down, but then the score was like 11-10.
Yeah.
Like, well, actually that's Sheffield's pace. So what am I actually watching here? And you're doing double take, really? What? Yeah, okay. But yeah, it was a fun game to watch. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, there was never more than a couple of shots in it in the first half, and Bristol were up 35-33 at halftime, and then early in the third quarter, Bell had 5 points, Mahan had a 3, and it's 56-35, and we talk all the time about how 46-35. We talk all the time how an 11-point lead in a 46-35 third quarter game is massive compared to if it was 66-55 in the second quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's difficult because Oganyemi played really well for Sheffield. He's and he started the game, so Tibes kind of must have settled on him now as their main starter. And the logic is it's kind of old school logic. Of the Bristol are small, they're playing these 4 smalls basically all the time, Let's beat them up inside. Let's just go inside.
Mm.
But it doesn't work like that. You know, you have to have spacing. You have to be able to get the ball inside, and you have to deal with the fact that these guys are going to collapse on you, and they're going to gang rebound, and they're going to try and block shots. And also, you know, if you're not precise, you're going to turn the ball over, and they're going to be down the other side, the other end of the court before you know it.
Mm.
And you know, Sheffield tried a little bit of that, particularly in the third quarter to go to, but they really, you know, they've got 3 centres, Sheffield, on their team, and they didn't play that many minutes with 2 of them on the court. They did it a little bit in the middle of the third quarter, but the rest of the way, it was primarily they were matching up with Bristol, the other way around, the 4 smalls, and you know, either Kipper Nichols at the 4 or Jordan Routinho at the 4, and you know, that's something they're going to have to look at with the balance of their roster, because you're going to, you know, if you're going to have 3 centers, you're going to have to, there's going to be times when you're going to have to play 2 of them at once. How do you create good shots in that? Bristol have 1 center. You know, that was it. That was Malcolm Delpeche, who was probably more impactful than the 3 Sheffield centers altogether, even though Oganyemi wasn't, as I say, was okay. And you know, his kind of rim protection as well, which is, you know, I think massively underrated. You know, we have that block at the end of the season last year, but even in this game, you know, he gets back in transition block shots. He's able to help in the weak side as well, and block shots. Really underpin everything that they did. And then the guards take over, and Andreas has the ability to rotate Miller out. And Miller rotated out with 3 fouls and 6 minutes to go. And I'm thinking, oh, you're going to blow this lead. You need Miller back in the game, you know, because Miller's the guy that really makes them tick. But then he's got the ability to have Watson-Gale or Samuels. And this time it was Watson-Gale last week. It was Samuels this week. Stepped up, making plays, getting into Sheffield's face. And I think once they kind of withstood the run at the end of the third quarter, that kind of took the tails out of Sheffield.
The lead had reached 14. Routinho hit a 3. Delpeche made a couple of scores. It was a 9-0 run.
With Miller on the bench, and I'm
in
thinking,
the third quarter, and it was 53-48 with a couple of minutes to go. But then early in the fourth quarter, Ollison hits a 3, Samuels hits a 3. Sheffield couldn't score. 9-0 run in 5 minutes, and Bristol are away and comfortable.
Well, Kipper was having one of his inconsistent games. I mean, he wasn't right from, you know, he checked in at the beginning of the fourth quarter, didn't know what the shot clock was. Then tried to save the ball out of bounds, didn't save it, but if he had saved it, he'd thrown it to Bristol for a dunk. And then I think the third, there was another play where maybe he got blocked out as well. And Atiba basically lost patience 3 minutes into the fourth quarter and brought on Sacco and Montgomery.
Yeah.
Now that was basically a message to I think, I don't know who came out. It might have been Glasgow and Nichols and maybe somebody else as well. But that was basically a message to them saying, no, you know, this isn't good enough, because he wasn't bringing in Montgomery and Sacco at that point because he thought it was the best way of coming back into the game. It was because, well, you guys aren't going to do it. I have to give these guys a shot.
Yeah.
That's the way it was. And also sending a message, you know, which is for the rest of the season, you know, no, we don't get a pass on stuff like this. So you got to be locked in every game. And I don't think Kipper was particularly locked in that game. Or if he was locked in, he was knocked out of it.
Yeah.
Or to be honest, the focus wasn't where it needed to be. And Sheffield couldn't score and didn't score for 8 minutes.
No.
Or didn't make a field goal for 8 minutes. And that's probably, you would say, probably their Achilles heel at the moment. It's a few teams' Achilles heel, but if Nelson isn't able to create, you know, then they've got shooters on the wing in Routinho and Banks. If Nichols isn't there, then you're relying on either Nelson to create or the bigs to score. And, you know, that kind of, you know, work hard to throw it down there. And then you're a big guy. You've got to make a play over Delpeche with Bell coming over from the help side with arms everywhere. When you're a bit tired and you're not in rhythm, that's why you score 55 points.
Yeah. So it's only the second time that Sheffield have ever started this season with 3 defeats. 2012-13, they lost their first 3 games.
Well, they've had a tough schedule. I mean,
London, they're a pretty good 0-3 team.
You took one up for London, then you know they
should have won. They should have won the Manchester game, but for Kipper's toes.
Kipper's toes, and obviously Kipper's wrist as well. We
Well,
talked about that.
yeah,
We saw the photograph afterwards,
we
after
did,
the show last week, which showed that was a pretty clear whack on the arm. Where I couldn't see if he made contact or not. It was pretty clear that he did.
Yeah.
So,
But he would have had to have made the three free throws. Whereas if he
yeah.
shuffles his toes back, they're up one and probably going to win the game.
Indeed, yeah. But Bristol in that environment, and we've talked about the environment there. You know, as I say, you know, they've basically just doubled down and said, this is what we're going to be. You know, we're going to be small, we're going to be athletic, we're going to be all over the court, we're going to be in your face, we're going to be through a number of different guards at you. Because even Bell, I mean, Bell played a bit at the 5 in this game, and he's only probably 6'5". You know, when Delpesh sat down, because he didn't have Smith, and King is probably 6'6". But you know, they're saying we're going to create an advantage off the dribble, and we're going to attack. And I think their success is going to depend on how they do away from home, when the energy isn't quite the same.
Yeah.
And also,
can they make enough shots?
If they can make enough shots, thank you. You're getting to know me.
Yeah.
Or maybe
it's my worry as well, because their shooting numbers are not great.
They keep rebounding, you get more shots. You know.
Yeah. So my stat of the game for this one is 42% of all of the games in BBL history where 123 points or fewer were scored were played in by Bristol or Sheffield.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the Jim Brandon Sharks. I remember that before. It was tough watching.
I think they had like 11 in that first season or something.
Yeah,
of the 123 games.
No one knew who they were, and Roger Huggins and Chris Finch and co, and they just shut people down.
Yeah.
I remember watching them at Washington against Sunderland. I think it was something like 80 to 52 or something.
Yeah. They have the record. They have the record, which I think was 54-46 against Doncaster.
Yeah, I traveled to South Yorkshire for that one. Nothing else is talked about in coal mining country.
No, they won the league though.
Oh, well, they did, because Finch and Brandon had them playing basketball unlike any type of basketball anybody ever seen. Rhythmical, smart, passing, cutting, shooting open shots, and then throw it into Huggins when he was up, when they had nothing else. Basically.
Right. So back to it was too American at the time. Back to more modern times. King had 18 and 7, shot 8 of 11, but the rest of the team were 19 of 61, which was my little concern. 11 and 11 for Bell, 10 and 10 for Malcolm Delpesh. Only 6 turnovers and 6 points.
Lots of guards, you know.
Oganyemi was the only player in double figures for Sheffield with 12. The Sharks were 23 of 67 shooting. They had 18 turnovers, which Bristol turned into 21 points. Let's come to today and start in Manchester.
Well, hold for a second. Let's just register our disapproval at the Manchester, Cheshire, Glasgow triumvirate, shall we first?
What, all tipping at the same time?
5 o'clock on a Sunday.
You
know, it is the, you know, will no one think of the podcasters? I mean, it is the ultimate of you know, Sunday night breakdown nightmare.
Yeah. That's the only ones who do a Sunday night breakdown.
Exactly, yeah. So you get Manchester, Cheshire, and Glasgow. You know, I mean, come on, guys. You know, I'm beginning to feel undervalued.
Yeah. Manchester 92, Plymouth 79. Corey Johnson didn't play. I didn't hear anything as to why he didn't play. He was in uniform, but he was on the bench. But
I don't really fancy. I didn't play particularly well in Newcastle last year. I don't really fancy going back.
Maybe. But Giants out to a good start, 9-2, forced an early timeout. Plymouth back to 9 points apiece, but the Patriots were really struggling to make a shot. They were 1 of 9 from 3-point range in the early stages. Giants had an 11-2 run and led 20-11.
I mean, the reality of the Manchester, Glasgow, Cheshire triumvirate is that you always have to bail on one of the games quite early, and this was the game I bailed on and just kept a brief eye on the scores in relation to after about the first 15 minutes, so the halfway through the second quarter. Manchester out to about 15, 42-24, something like that. And Bristol, Plymouth are a little bit challenged offensively. I think we know that, you know, that their shooting is basically Simons. Outside of that, the Starnisa Brandon, who's a driver. Williams, who's again a guy who doesn't look to shoot many threes per game. Hassan and Hawthorne. And Hawthorne's an energy 4, and Hassan's obviously a pay and touch player. So that's really Simons is their outside look, and that makes it slightly difficult, I think.
Without Joe Hart, obviously.
Without Joe Hart, obviously, yeah, and from last year without Raoul Graham, who was part of that last year, and even off the bench, they have LVC who shoots a little bit, doesn't look to shoot first, and the American guy Mark-Edric Bell, who's again kind of an energy guy, not really a stretch guy. So that kind of puts him in the same, almost even worse a category than Newcastle were on Friday night in dealing with Manchester's length, because it allows Manchester to pack the paint, and they need no invitation to pack the paint. It's what they want to do, because Lee wants to block shots, Green wants to rebound, and Robertson doesn't want to go anywhere outside of 8 feet from the basket. So that kind of plays into the matchup, doesn't really work for them. So you've got to rely on guys who aren't necessarily regular shooters making shots. And that's always easier at home than away, in particular, in Manchester at Plymouth is a good 4.5 hours. So coming out and making shots in that gym is going to be tough for them. That said, I think Manchester were a little bit after a little bit hyped early, because the game went back and forwards very quickly, but no one really could make a play. And you're waiting for Manchester to kind of blow the game away, and they didn't. So they're by no means the finished article either.
The thing that made me keep an eye on this, perhaps a bit more than you, was at the end of the first quarter there was a bit of chatter between everybody, and I was thinking, something's going to happen here. But before we get to I'm assuming you missed what did happen.
I will watch that back. I'll give you a report on that next week. Sorry.
So Lewis had a 4-point play as the Giants, or typical Nicholas Lewis 4-point play, early in the second quarter. Giants had the first 8 points, 32-16. Green had a couple of threes and a big dunk, and he's doing all the thing down court. Really, he's going to be fun to watch. If you go to Manchester every week, he's going to be a guy to certainly watch. And it's 3 minutes from halftime. They're 42-24 ahead, which is the point that you got to, but just before halftime.
With Green, we'll just see whether he's still doing that in February.
Yeah.
If he's still doing that in February, then that makes you kind of the full Shelton. That means you're there for the year. But if you're as a rookie, that's the big thing with Green. That's what I was saying before. Can he keep that manic intensity going? Sorry, go on.
So just before halftime, something happened, and I looked back again, and I was like, they were at it again. There was people, and they showed a replay. So you need to go back and look at this. They showed a replay, and basically, Robertson threw the ball in the face of Issa Brandon, and it was one of them where he sort of did it in a sort of, I'm not looking which way I'm throwing it, but I'm throwing it right in your face. From across the key. It was after, I think, 3 seconds had been called, or a travel or something, some sort of violation. And he just literally hit him in the face with the ball. So the referees had a bit of a conversation about it, and it ended up a double technical. And even I think it was Dave on commentary was going, gosh, that's a bit harsh. He got hit in the face with the ball and got technical.
They pulled the old double technical out.
Yeah.
So I think of them.
The interesting, so obviously that fired it up a little bit. Now they are trialing the review system, and I think it will come in shortly in the BBL.
Wow, this adds a whole new degree of interest to the podcast.
Yeah.
You must have thought that we needed to freshen it up a bit.
Well, they tried it at the end of
VAR and stuff.
Yeah. At the end of last season, and I think it's just about one venue that they're trying to sort out or something or other. So if there had been a review system, I think Legend would have been walking off to the locker room. But as it was, he stayed on. And
so about what time was
this? This is 35 seconds from halftime.
Right. Well, okay. Well, such is the miracle of YouTube, right?
Yeah.
I can literally go
watch it in real time
and check it out. Yeah. So hang on 1 second. 35 seconds, you think? Yeah.
Yeah. 35 seconds from halftime, and there was
guys. This could add to a whole new live kind of.
Live VAR. This is live VAR 3 hours after the game.
We are making history here as we
Podcast
speak.
history.
Right, I'm at 41 seconds here. So Robertson's, Fletcher's going to the rim to his left hand. Robertson's in there. Yeah, Fletcher turns around. Robertson goes up. Referee calls a 3-second call, and Robertson throws the ball straight at Brandon. He's got to be thrown out for that. He has to be thrown out for that because when Brandon is nowhere near the referee, you know, it's not like he's throwing the ball to the ref. He can't be as bad a passer as that.
No.
And
if you leave it
again, now here we go, boom, boom, boom. You see what's happened is that Brandon says something. Brandon says something, and then Robertson throws in his face. So it's a technical on Brandon, and Robertson's thrown out. Not a question. And if the referee's called a double technical on that, they bottled it.
Yeah.
Bottom
well,
line.
I'm just assuming they didn't see it properly, and therefore you've had a conversation, and all you've seen is two guys coming together and drawing at each other. In the same way, me watching in real time because I was kind of looking at the other game, turn around and all I saw was people going at each other. But yeah.
I get that. Here we go. I see what the ref's called it. He's there. Boom. He's looking at it. That ref looks away. Oh, no, baseline ref. Baseline ref sees it straight away, sees everything. Looks like it's one of the Unsworths. Should have thrown him out. Don't know which one it is. Simon or Paul should have thrown him out.
So anyway,
anyway, that is podcast history.
Certainly, this is why they love us in Spain, mate. Anyway, it's 47-30 at halftime. Green has 14 points. Antonio Williams sparked a 9-2 run to get it back to 54-45 midway through the third quarter, but 5 points from Lee, back out to 13, and Williams did his best, but it was basically him trying to drag the team in, and they didn't really have enough to threaten to get all the way back, Plymouth.
No, they have a lot of spirit, a lot of gumption, and a good togetherness, and they don't take a backward step. But they're a flawed roster at the moment. Obviously, it's a franchise which is partly owned by the league, so you know they're having to manage that. They haven't got. They're looking for a venue after Christmas. I think they're still trying to sort that out. You know, they're one of those clubs that we need to support to try and keep them going and try and build up over the years again. And PJ is doing a great job in keeping them competitive in the meantime. But no, they haven't quite, at this point in time on their roster, they haven't quite got enough. And losing Joe's shooting and Joe's reliability is the ability to play like 30 minutes a game, which is probably what they need, is actually a massive loss.
Yeah.
So, you know, we look at this, I mean, there are some, it's kind of really, the kind of disappointing thing this year is it's, you know, the British qualified guys have gone down, you know. So Glasgow went down, Bell went down, Joe Hart's gone down. You know, that's kind of unfortunate because they're the guys who are hardest to replace, and they're the guys that we need to have around the league. I forgot something about the Bristol game as well. On my new ref watch, we've got obviously so many referees in this league now who've decided to go kind of, you know, the full Kojak, you know, literally fully shaved. And then we had a new ref watch, a new ref spot at Bristol. Not only did he go with the kind of the silver locks, which I have to say, I was loving. I was applauding the crowd. We had the full Magnum mustache. You know? We had the silver hair and the Tom Selleck at the same time, and I'm like saying that is what I like to see. And to be fair, he refed a perfectly good game. I don't know the gentleman. I've never seen him. Obviously, he's from down south. I'm not. Good luck to him. But the hair got me. The hair was like, whoa, yeah. There's another one of us, you know. Stop all these baldies kind of taking over.
So Green led the Giants 28 points, 9 of 13 shooting. Lee had 14 points, 13 rebounds, 7 block shots, and Robertson.
Does that does that make him a Jolly Green Giant?
It does make him a Jolly Green Giant. I did think he was well suited to the green uniform today. Antonio Williams led Plymouth with 21 points, 8 rebounds. Must be 8 assists and 4 rebounds, mustn't it, Rob?
Well, I don't know. To be honest, he can jump.
Yeah, it could be. Well, 21, 8 and 4. Either way. Bell with 17 and 11 in 32 minutes off the bench. And Simons with 13. They shot 36% from the floor, Plymouth. Tough to win a game from that sort of shooting numbers.
Yeah.
So let's go to Glasgow, where the Caledonia Gladiators
Not a fan. Not a fan.
beat the Surrey Scorchers.
No.
Traditionalists what? So the Edinburgh Rocks beat the Guildford Heat 81 points to
exactly
72.
my view is let's keep it going. You know, I mean, Glasgow. I mean, look, Glasgow have been around. Glasgow Rocks have been around for like 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And they've won nothing. So why would they want to change their name?
Yeah.
Good point.
Well,
Actually,
I'm presuming it's because the new venue that they're looking to have built within 2 years is not within the confines of Glasgow.
And to be fair, it's actually a very good reason to change your name, isn't it?
Because when they went from Edinburgh to Braehead, they became Scottish, didn't they? And then they became Glasgow from there.
The interesting thing is, if you're going purely alliterative, then there really should have been the Glasgow Gladiators for the past 20 years.
And the Gladiators nickname, I think that's where it originally came from. The Lady Rocks, I think, were originally called the Gladiators. I could be wrong on that.
It's also quite ironic, isn't it, really? Because if you think about it, obviously the Gladiators were in ancient Rome, right? Yet the Roman wars stopped at Carlisle.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, actually, I mean, Newcastle to said wherever it is, on the far coast. So it never got as far as Glasgow. So how dare they call themselves Gladiators? Historically,
Yeah. I'm not sure there were giants in Manchester, and there were buses in Leicester, which is where the riders.
Indeed, that is true. Yes, and I get
the Eagles in Newcastle. Are there many?
Not very often. I don't think. No, I preferred Comets actually. We didn't have any of them either.
Yeah. But wasn't the Comets to do with the logo of the what was it? The original arena? Telly West was it originally, wasn't it?
Telly West, maybe
didn't the logo? I thought there was something before Telly West, but didn't the logo for the original arena have stars in it, and that was where Comets?
Yeah, it did, and it was nice, but it was always very alliterative in Newcastle Comets. So Comets, I thought it was quite a but obviously, they branded it the Eagles, and they've failed ever since.
Yeah. Anyway, shall we go back to the game? Gladiators 81, Scorchers 72. No Teo, and according to Mark Woods on the commentary, he's having surgery on a pec muscle, lifting weights. Not an injury you or I have ever suffered. I think it's fair to suppose.
For yourself. Yes, true.
But that could be 3 to 6 months, depending on the outcome of surgery, which is a really bad news. Lawrence apparently is a tweak and is a couple of weeks away, which would be better. And obviously Johnson has had the
problem with Lawrence was a hamstring, though, wasn't it?
Johnson is still he's had visa issues, so he's not there. But they did have Wang in, and there was no Onwas, I think it's pronounced, Prince Onwas for I put for the Rocks here on my piece of paper for the Gladiators. Shocking for the Gladies. It does need abbreviating to a single syllable. We need to think that through.
Cali,
yes, yeah.
Cali Glads. No, that sounds a bit like something you'd buy in home base. No, okay.
Anyway, 9 points for Darian Adams to start it off. They jumped out 17-6 after 5 minutes, and you were thinking, oh, sorry, undermanned on the road all the way up. You got all the goodwill behind Caledonia with their new rebrand and all of that. This could be a long evening for the Scorchers.
Yeah, I mean, Adams is a nice player. I looked at him a little bit in the summer when they signed him. He's a nice player. He had 15 a game at Jacksonville State, where Kane Henry from UK played as well. They played in the Commonwealth Games. Kane had like 10 or 11. Darian Adams has 15 a game, and he's nice. And I thought he started off the game, like it was his first pro game, which it really is. And you can generally see that, over many years watching players play their first pro game, I mean, the performances that you get, are generally almost. You think there's something. You think it's going to be like every week. I remember the one I really remember is DeAndre Parks. Dre Parks played for us 2016-17. His first game, he came out. He had 4 threes in 3 minutes, and he was literally jacked. It was just like, wow, what we got here. And because guys get locked into it, because it's almost
They've achieved the lifetime ambition, haven't they?
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have. Yeah, you know, they are getting paid to play.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, and so to see that and to see Adams come out that way, I kind of saw that same kind of look in his eye, you know, which was good. Sorry, really. I mean, they had to start with Josh Steele as a point guard, and I like Josh a lot, you know, as a player and various things, but he wouldn't even call himself a starting point guard, I don't think. And that kind of hurt them a little bit in relation to their that kind of integration, because Lloyd runs a lot of ball screen, a lot of 4-out ball screen stuff, and that's why you have 4 players on the outside, one screener in the middle, and without kind of a natural ball handler to run that, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get your timings right. Wang's going to be fun to watch, no question. He's not shy. If he takes 2 steps towards the rim, he's going above the rim. And if he takes 2 steps back from the rim, he's shooting it. From what I could see, and again, I picked up most of this. I watched most of the first half and quite a bit of the second half of this on the split screen. So he's going to be fun to watch. I'm interested to see where he gets to. I think losing Teo is brutal. You know, in the preseason, they played 2 games in Newcastle in the preseason. Watched them both, and Teo was, you could see he was locked into this. You know, he hasn't been in a good team, or he hasn't been in a successful program for 3 or 4 years, and you could just see that he was energized by you know, the guys that he had around him, and maybe the coach or whatever, I don't know. But for him to go through all that, and then to hurt himself, you know, lifting weights, I mean, it's nightmarish, isn't it? It's just teaches you don't lift weight, kids.
Don't lift weights. That's
Don't
the
lift
learning
weights,
from
kids,
this.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Absolutely. You know, go have an ice cream instead.
So I actually thought Surrey did a really good job to be in the game at the end of the first quarter.
Yeah, well, they did.
They were 4 of 14 shooting, and they were only 23-15 down.
Yeah, 2 things happened, because one, I mean, that's Caledonian Gladiators didn't get much out of anybody apart from Adams. Sloan made a 3, but the Ali Fraser got 2 fouls, and obviously that's a lot of their offense disappears when he sits down. And then they started to struggle with their bench. You know, I thought Fraser Malcolm again was excellent in this game. He's taking another step, but they started to struggle getting any form of offense with their bench. And Gareth is going quite deep, and he's happy to go quite deep early in the season. So that always kind of impacts. Sorry, I helped them stay close. Sorry, also, you know, they were able to bring Bazumba into the game. He's probably still wouldn't regard himself as a true point guard, but he's just slightly more of a point guard than Steele is. And he was able to get stuff to the rim. And also they've got a motivated Jack Domney, and they've got a kid who can score in Jalen Ray, just to be able to make just enough shots to keep them interested. But I think it was Glasgow's kind of lack of fluency offensively when their bench came in, which was a primary reason for it staying close.
So Ray had an and 1 and Wang a 3. They had the first 6 points of the second quarter to 23-21. And then the last 3.5 minutes of the first half was 13-3 to the Gladiators. So they were 43-31 ahead at halftime. Ray and Dobbs cut it to 49-44 midway through the third quarter, but they could never quite get back. And this was the game that of the 3 that I was watching, because I was checking the Manchester one. I was thinking there could be a fight here, and the Cheshire Newcastle game was obviously a little bit behind. This was the one, every time I looked at it, it was 7, 8, 9 points almost for the whole second half. There didn't seem to be a great deal of movement.
They got it down to 4. They got it down to 4 at 71-67. I think.
And then Bunyan hit a 3, did he?
Ray made a 3. Someone made a 3 from the corner, and then Bunyan made one from the corner. And I didn't know it was Bunyan. The camera didn't get to him shooting it, but you knew that he was stood there because of the fact it went in, and then you see him coming back. And they got a couple more stops, and they didn't have enough offense. They're taking, they're an import short there. 2 primary British players aren't playing. And they didn't have enough offense to get themselves over the hump in the game. Which, it's tough, because they look, they have a decent system. They have some solid BBL players there, but this league is going to be very tough this year. And there are not many In fact, there are no wins that are going to be handed to you. And obviously, that's a cup game. And I think Glasgow now have to go to Sheffield, which will be
Sheffield,
interesting
yeah,
game.
Caledonia.
Yeah, Glasgow, Caledonia have to go to Sheffield. Okay.
We're both going to do it for the next
Caledonia
2 years.
Yeah, have to go to South Yorkshire.
Yeah,
right.
There we go. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Tyneside will be playing at South Devon. That's what I think about this, right?
So Adams led the way with 19. Malcolm had 15. Steele was 8 of 11 for 20 and 7 for the Scorchers. Ray had 19 points and 6 assists, 20 turnovers. Though again, we talked about point guard issues.
Yeah.
So let's get to the final game of the day. Cheshire Phoenix 80, Newcastle Eagles 77. Nick started 9-2 within 2.5 minutes, and then Cohen and Mockford hit some threes. 11-10, 5.5 left in the first quarter. There was then apparently a 14-4 run. It got to 25-15, but the stream seemed to be having a bit of a mare at that point, so I'm not quite sure what happened.
It wasn't great. There was bits that was refreshing a lot. Newcastle, coach Mark is clearly still trying to figure out his team in relation to who needs to play with who. But the lineup that they started with was probably a bit scoring deficient, particularly as Kennedy was available for this game. And so, you would probably see out of all of them, Cohen, Hamlet, Mockford, Shelton, and Ogburns, that probably Hamlet is a scorer, Mockford is a shooter. Ogburns is a big, Shelton's an energy guy, and Cohen is a floor general. That's not a lot of scoring for a BBL team. That's not a lot of scoring. And I thought not a lot of spacing either. And I thought they struggled early on with their spacing. And if the bigs don't finish, and they didn't finish on Friday night, and they didn't finish early on in this game either at the rim, you're playing two bigs and you're not finishing at the rim and you're not destroying the opposition in the offensive glass, then you're going to be giving up stuff the other way. And on top of that, you're going to be on your heels and you're going to give up stuff in transition as well. So Cheshire, I thought, were Cheshire knew themselves a bit better than Newcastle did. I think that's probably the best way of describing it. I think Newcastle figured it out as the game went on, mind. Also they got some production out of Daniels early, which is they haven't had in the first couple of games, which is big. Austin wasn't 100%. He was going at he wasn't going full speed at all. He was being a setup guy basically. But their spacing and Jamel made a couple of threes as well. And Jamel's obviously come out offensively really aggressive this year, which is really good for his development because we're probably going to need him in the JB games. And it was more their offense was okay. Eagles' defense wasn't great, certainly their interior defense and their recognition of other players. But it was more the problem was at the offensive end for Newcastle. They didn't have much in the way of shot creation. And that's something they're going to have to look at going forward. So
Evans and Neighbour hit threes to take it out to 34-21. Varner and Kennedy did likewise to bring it back to 38-31. Spin it forward because the excitement comes at the end. Teague pushed it to 54-41. Kennedy got it back to 54-46. And then Neighbour hits a three at the end of the third quarter, Strawberry at the start of the fourth quarter, and it's 69-52. And you're thinking, well, 17 points is a lot for a team that's only scored 52. But Shelton, you talked about energy, has the steal and the AM1, and then Hamlet has a steal and an AM1, and it's 69-60 with 6.5 minutes to go, and suddenly Eagles are running and looking good in the open court.
Well, and this is what I talk about, Eagles kind of figuring their team out. They haven't figured out the league yet. You can see that, Will Neighbour's getting too many pick and pop. Will Neighbour's getting pick and pop threes, and Leslie Varner, who should be able to recover to him, is a step off, and and Jordan Strawberry the same catch threes. They're not. I don't think anywhere near where they will be in relation to kind of understanding the opposition, which is massive early on in the season. But what happened was probably in the middle of the third quarter, they went small. They gave up on the kind of the two bigs. And Ogburns and Shelton sat down, and it was Defoe and Kennedy came in, and Kennedy played the rest of the way. And Kennedy's a massive player for them this year because he's experienced, he's smart, he's 6'6", he's been around, he knows the league, and he's a facilitator as well as and can score when necessary, and a good defender. So suddenly Newcastle are playing 4 out with Cohen, Hamlet, Kennedy, Varner, and Defoe, and Defoe then sits and it becomes Shelton, and Varner swaps in and out for Mockford, so it's still the same basically. And what that does is that just opens the floor, and then you see Hamlet go off, because Hamlet, I kind of thought he had this in him, but Hamlet was, I think, 25 points in this game, and there was a point in the fourth quarter whereby he was unstoppable. He was comfortable in the half court. He's got this pull-up shot, he's got this floater shot, and this extra space that lineup kind of gave him really allowed them to kind of get some momentum, and he becomes a very, very hard guy to guard when you haven't got people in there clogging the lane. So his energy, his kind of, he impressed me in the game because, you know, that was a big point for them when they went down 17. I'm talking a lot about Newcastle, I'll talk about Cheshire in a minute. It was a big point for them when they went down 17. You know, because as a group, you're a very young group. You've only been together a few weeks. You know, you're basically a team of BBR rookies with a rookie coach in a league which is full of people who aren't rookies. Yeah. And, you know, if you lose, you know, if the head disappears and you're down and you lose that game by 25, then there's a big problem because you got to get it back.
Yeah.
This game season. And that they survived that, and you got to see a little bit of some of the players in adversity. The coach will be very keen on that. Now they lost the game, which isn't good, obviously, but I think they learned a lot through the adversity. But that's what happened basically. They matched up more. You know, suddenly Kennedy was guarding Neighbour. So, you know, you lose a bit of size, but, you know, if you know, he might make the odd shot on the post, but he's not going to be getting open threes. Yeah. Then the Cheshire guys have to break me down off the dribble. Suddenly Shelton's playing with energy and coming over, blocking shots and getting steals, playing at the 5 spot instead of the 4 spot, where he was kind of stuck kind of half in, half out. And that allowed them to build some momentum, but it didn't quite make enough smart plays at the end, unfortunately. My perspective, unfortunately. That said, Cheshire were consistent.
Yeah.
You know, and Cheshire, I think, are also they've only got the 4 imports at the moment. Teague was impressive, although I thought Newcastle probably I thought they over defended him on the perimeter and under defended Neighbour. I'll put it that way. You know, Teague. You know, I'm not sure Teague's a guy you got to run off the 3-point line at this point. I'm certainly sure that Neighbour is, and I thought they kind of got that. Kind of didn't get that right. But he was impressive. Jamel has obviously really started kind of looking like a kind of a team leader, and the Americans are kind of finding their way. That's Daniels and Strawberry and Evans is bringing them energy as well. But they were kind of hanging on a bit at the end.
Yeah, you know, it was one of those games where you just wonder if it was another minute longer, whether Newcastle might have got all the way back. But let's go through the final few plays. Shelton with a couple of free throws with 1:52 to go, 76-70. A steal by Cohen and Shelton layup, 76-72 with 1:25 to go. Teague off a great pass from Daniel with 1:15 to go, 78-72. Eagles missed a shot, but then I think it was Shelton battered the offensive rebound out to Mockford, perfectly in rhythm, knocks down a 3, 78-75 with 50 seconds ish to go. The clock was a bit hard to follow at that point. Yeah. Teague was blocked by Kennedy with 29 seconds to go, and Shelton running the floor lays it in, 78-77, and there was about 23 seconds to go at that point, but no time out called, so they were playing live, and I think that threw Newcastle off because they didn't quite realize that there wasn't a shot clock, so I think they were in defend mode first, and then obviously Mark is screaming at them, foul, because if you defend until the buzzer, you lose.
Yeah, I thought they were I thought they were a bit naive. They were a bit naive on Friday night as well. It was certainly one of the end of the quarters whereby they had a dead shot clock and they went with 9 seconds to go. You know, that's what I'm saying. They're really quite a young young group with a first year coach, you know, so they've got a lot of tightening up to do, but I think they've got the talent there to do it on what I've seen. But yeah, they were a bit like, you know, in relation to that, you know, only Cohen, I think it was Cohen eventually who did it, but only Cohen seems to be the one who has his head around him. You know, it's really not that hard. And the clock, you look up at the clock, it says 23 seconds and you have to foul. You know, that's not something a coach should be needing to tell you to do.
Or you look at the other clock and it's not switched on.
It's switched on even better. Yeah. I mean, that's something that any professional basketball player, you know, and sometimes it's a little bit harsh because it might only be one guy who doesn't know, but he's the one who's next to the ball.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's loud in that environment. So it doesn't mean the whole team didn't know. It just means that the one who didn't know.
So that cost them about 11 or 12 seconds because there was 11 seconds left when the foul eventually did come, but they weren't over the limit. So Ben calls the timeout, runs a play, inbound to Neighbour, he's fouled. They still needed one more. Inbound to Neighbour again, he's fouled. 9.1 seconds to go. Sorry, that was the first foul. 7.5 seconds to go on the second foul. He goes to the free throw line, makes both, 80-77. Eagles.
I was a bit frustrated again as an Eagles fan that they got the ball into Neighbour twice. You know, I think once they get the ball into him the first time, I think the second time, again, this is all the stuff about being, you know, being fresh to the league and people knowing people. You know, I don't look at the other guys on the Cheshire team and see any of them who have either a rep as an absolute lights out shooter or in this league as having made shots under pressure. Right? And Neighbour kind of has both. So you foul him the first time, but the second time you face guard him, you know, and you let somebody else get the basketball. And I thought, again, you know, those on little decisions like that, who goes to the line, can games be won and lost, you know? So
timeout, advance the ball, great play. Mockford got the shot you want, and he just didn't knock it down.
Just short, yeah. I mean, to be fair, you know, they got him off the curl and he was open and his feet were set and he was probably a little bit motion wise, kind of moving. So it wasn't entirely set, but you're not going to turn that shot down, are you?
No. From that position with that time, that's the best shot you could get, I would have thought.
Absolutely, it just fell short. You know, so be it. But you know, it was an interesting game. It was good for both teams. I think it was a good win for Cheshire because then Cheshire really needed to win.
Just to finish it off, because Strawberry gets fouled and misses both free throws.
Yeah,
I don't think the final shot was off before the buzzer, and I assume it missed because the camera didn't pan to the basket to see, and there was no controversy. So I assume it was late and it missed. But I mean, Strawberry needs to make one free throw there just to.
And he'd been the one who's shooting the last one.
Two. Yeah.
You
wouldn't need a three.
You wouldn't need a three, and the whole thing becomes a totally different game. You know, so this is the detail which matters in games, and when you've got you don't have time, you don't have a timeout to use because you want to keep one, and you don't have players who know, then they're not going to know this stuff. You know, that's the reality of it. So and the way you learn is, unfortunately, the way players learn is by doing. So next time they play them, hopefully have a better idea.
So Teague 21-8-4, Anderson 13-6, Neighbour 12-5. Hamlet, excuse me, Hamlet led the Eagles with 25 points. Shelton had 15-11-4. So we're through 2 weekends in the BBL season. Just 2 undefeated teams, Bristol and London, both winning 2 games. Glasgow haven't played again. I suppose Caledonia. It's on my table as Glasgow. I haven't changed that yet. Caledonia, I said, are undefeated, aren't they? Because they played 1 cup game, but they haven't played a league game yet. Manchester have won the most games, 3 wins out of 4 for them. Sheffield 0-3, Newcastle 0-2. Everybody else is at or around 500 or a game below. Any further along in your thought process this weekend? Still too early to.
The first time I've seen Glasgow, which is
Caledonia.
Caledonia. the time I've seen Caledonia, to be honest, if I'd been in, if it been Newcastle, but if it had been 5 years ago that they'd done this, right, and they wanted to call themselves Caledonia, which I think is the Roman name for Scotland or something.
It is, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would have insisted that they played every game a mile past Berwick. I wouldn't have had to drive up the M1 and the M74 and all that rubbish, or the A69 and do that grueling moors drive for 3 hours. They could have played.
Could be worse. Could be worse. Somebody I know, shall remain nameless, but definitely listens to this podcast, Googled Caledonia Stadium when he found out the name, and of course that's in Inverness, which is slightly further north.
Well, they could have played, well, if I'd have made them play in a cowshed in Galashiels, put it that way. But no, that's cool. So in seeing them was interesting, because they appear to be well put together. They're obviously they're a BBL team though. They're not kind of the next team next to London. They're still a BBL team, and I like that the point guard can clearly run a team, and the shooting guard Adams, I've said, as a player, didn't quite see enough out of Jackson, and I think the other kid was not Jackson, the wing whose name I forget, sorry, and Prince was injured, and the big guy they signed as a backup to Ali Fraser. So they're going to be solid. That's impressive, but they're going to be solid. They're going to be a team that you can beat and a team that can beat you. Well, let's move on up. Plymouth going to be gutsy, tough to play at home because of the travel. But they need some reinforcements, I think, because I can see them struggling and becoming, a little bit. They were a crest of a wave team last year with Williams and Simons. They were flying that crest of a wave. And I'm concerned if they end up having to surf the bottom, where they'll go, if they'll be able to maintain that, if those guys will have the right mentality is not the right word, temperament. Stability. Stability to handle that type if they have to go through a degree of adversity. That might be unfair to them, but we'll only see, we'll only see. So that's Caledonia, Plymouth. Sheffield, I think, will be all right. I think they might need to do a tweak. They might need a tweak or two. And it's going to be interesting to see whether this league settles down to be a league whereby systematic teams are actually disadvantaged, and you actually need to be playing a little bit more Bristolian, if I can put it that way, to get wins on a regular basis. Because I think part of the problem that Newcastle have had this for these 2 games as well is when they've tried to run systems associated to talent as opposed to
I think it's just I think it's when the two things collide, isn't it? It's that
you got
and therefore it's is the talent at the other end of the floor more important than the system that you're running.
And it's about, and some years it works one way, some years it works another. And
like I said about Bristol, I think if they shoot 38% all season, doesn't matter how much talent they have, they're going to struggle. But if they get to 48%,
well, it depends if they rebound 50%. That's the reality. That's the trade-off. Bristol, we're waiting. Bristol, 2 games at home, lots of energy. We're waiting. They're going to have to go see what happens. But I'm pleasantly invigorated by watching. I actually look forward to watching them, to be honest. Cheshire, I think, probably looking. I'll be surprised if they didn't look to add another American. Obviously, they've got Ulf's not playing at the moment, so he's an extra body for them, which would help them inside, because at the moment it's kind of Ocharobia and Tegan Neighbour kind of their stretch 4s. So the extra body for Ocharobia will help. But I think they need a healthy Austin to really trouble people, because he's the really only real guy off the dribble that's substantial. Jamel a little bit, but here and there. Who else is there? Manchester, just a team of BBL vets. They should finish top 4 on the group that they have if they stay together. If they all get paid, if everything works, if the club works, the roster they've got should be top 4. Newcastle, I think Newcastle will be all right as well. I think they've got a bit of working out to do, but what I saw of particularly of Hamlet today and what I've seen of Cohen in the 2 games suggests to me that they're going to be quite stable. in relation to their ability to score the ball, and then they just need some production from their bigs. Bottom line, they need to get some production from their bigs, finishing around the rim in particular, because they just haven't done that. And I think if they do that, they could have been 2-0 instead of 0-2. But they've got London coming, so that Mark, you can start checking your record books for how many times have they been 1-3 now, But to a certain degree, London comes actually a good thing for them, because it's a no pressure game. It's a game where they get to get better. They get to play and get to work things through, and the coach gets to know his roster a little bit better.
Surrey need to get healthy.
Surrey just need to get healthy. Surrey are kind of in that kind of Glasgow Caledonia category of being kind of a really, from what I've seen, being a really solid basketball team. But Andrew Lawrence is just utterly key to that. And if Andrew Lawrence isn't healthy, he's going to have to find an American point guard, I think. Because if you gambled on Andrew Lawrence's health over the past 3 years, you'd have pulled a Liz Truss, wouldn't you? He's selling the power. You're sold. The gilts would be being sold off the market. Andrew Lawrence gilts, because bless him, the guy just hasn't been able to stay healthy. So Lloyd's gonna have to make a decision on that. But I don't think Steele and Bazumbru is kind of viable over the course of a whole BBL season. He might think differently, but that's his prerogative. Leicester, I think Leicester will be okay. As I say, the thing for me with them is their mentality, and it's not because I've got any doubts about the kind of the caliber of the people and the players he's got, because we saw that last year. But they are basically the same as last year, so it's that mentality of having to climb that hill again. And this time, instead of climbing the hill, you're climbing a hill. And when you get to the top of the hill, there's a bloody big beanstalk. And when you get to the top of the bloody big beanstalk, there's a ladder. And you get to the top of that ladder, there's Sam Decker smiling on you and Josh Palmer dunking on you. And that's a heck of a thing, and that's great for the games against London. But then they're going to have to get up for Manchester and for Sheffield and everybody. And whilst London are very fond of saying, there's a target on our back, there really isn't. That sounds absolutely weird, right? But the target for the teams in the league is actually to be second. At this point, the target is Leicester, because Leicester are what everybody wants to be. In relation to stability, in relation to continuous winning in this league. No one knows how long London's going to be around. Could be a year, could be 3 years, could be 5 years. They could end up being a EuroLeague team, and the rest of our league might go like that. Okay, but at this point in time, anybody saying that they know is a liar. Okay, now in relation to Leicester, we know they're going to be around, or we assume they're going to be around, and in fact I know they're going to be around because the guy that they've just signed is a BBL signing. They're not chasing, not chasing a 10 grand a month player to try and keep up with London. They wanted to, they could have, asked the league to pay for it, but it's not going to happen. So what do you do? So Leicester are the team that's actually going to have a bit of a target on their backs, I think, early on in the season, which isn't very fair on them, but it's the way it is. And I think London's going to be the team where everyone's going to go, wow, let's have a go at these guys, but ultimately we got no pressure. So that makes a difference to the way Leicester have to handle things as well. And they've got, obviously they have a very, very solid squad. But as I said, and they're going to be able to beat teams with their ability and with their coaching, all that stuff. The issue is going to be the mentality. Can they just do that mountain again? And can you do that mountain again from behind? Because if you can be 14, 15-5 in this league is a great season. 15-5 halfway through, and but to Leicester that'd be disappointing to everybody. Everybody else would take it like a shot. And if you're 15, if you're 15-5 and London's 19-1 or 20-0, where's your motivation to keep climbing that? To keep battling away for that. That's the battle for them. London, as I said, it's Coach Schmidt in the tap.
It is.
Just turn that tap a bit too hot. Don't scald yourself. Don't scald the rest of the league. Keep us all interested, please, Ryan. But but when you want to, you can flick that switch. I think that is everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh well, we'll save that next. Save that for another 3 or 4 weeks before we do that again.
Indeed.
Wrong. But this live action thing is absolutely not. It's great, isn't it? We have now the ability to do it in real time.
Up.
So we've leveled up to YouTube. To go back on YouTube, talk about it in real time as if we watched it. Which actually does the Glasgow, Cheshire, Manchester triumvirate. It's kind of one in the face for the league. You can't get away with it.
Yeah.
You know,
I just got to say Caledonia to you again.
Yeah.
Right, on that bombshell, on that Caledonian bombshell, we are going to call it an evening. So whatever you're doing this week, have a great week. We'll be watching Caledonia on Wednesday night and all of the rest of the basketball this week. And we'll be back next Sunday night to break it all down.
Okay, here's one question before you go down. Sorry, one more question. And you can have to next week for this if you want. Has there ever been a team in the league with a first name of 4 syllables?
First name, well, Caledonia. Thames Valley?
Thames, that's 2 names.
Okay. Oh, all right. Well, but that's still the first name.
Valley. Yeah, it's Thames. Well, that's 2 names. Okay, Tim. I'll give you a credit. That is, I had no clue that you'd have any sort of answer to that. But spot on.
Right, lovely.
Other answers are also accepted on Twitter.
Yeah, indeed. So have a great week. We'll be back next Sunday. See you next week. Goodbye.
Yes, guys.